son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
Welcome back to the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. It's me, James, and we've got two very special guests here, Daniel and David, of One of These Nights. They're here! Yeah! How are you guys doing?
Hooray, it's us. Good, how are you, James?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I'm excited to be here chatting with you guys. And before we dig into the juicy topic we've got, let's talk a little bit about the band, because I know you guys just put out some music and a video. You guys have kind of been on a pretty consistent roll. Dave, you've briefly talked about it on other podcast episodes, but why don't you guys fill me in? What's going on?
Daniel, do you want to take it? Okay.
Sure.
So
That slight delay.
you
there.
take it, Daniel.
Sure. Yeah, no, you're right. We just did a single, came out the other day. We've got the video coming up here shortly. We've kind of been on like this 2-month cycle shooting for that, putting out singles. But yeah, the last one was a cover. This one was an original we worked on, featuring the alien doll in the back behind me. I don't know if you can see
Sick.
it, but
Hell yeah.
The star.
yeah, he's in the video. But no, and this one's kind of more the direction we've been heading in, which is a little bit more synth heavy, a little bit poppier. Definitely influences from our previous project, Voss Vitae, that we were in for a long time. But yeah, it's something new, pop punk still, but trying for a new direction, and I think it's something we're definitely gonna stick with.
Yeah, no, dude, I've been loving it. I've been really liking the new approach, and that's something that Dave had talked about previously on another episode. Just instead of it being like an album cycle, it's just song by song, video by video. It gives you a chance to kind of focus on the promotion of each of those things. And
Right.
you release an album, even if you do a very shorter release, 5 to 7 songs or something like that. Most people aren't going to listen to the shit after 3. Most people aren't going to make it that far,
Yeah,
But
not these days. Yeah.
in single doses, I feel like the shit translates a little bit better, or at least it permeates. It stands a chance to permeate a little bit better than the other way. So yeah, I think it's a smart approach for sure. But I mean, personally, I was bummed as shit when Voss Vitae broke up like that, because I mastered 2 records for you
Yep.
guys, right?
Yep.
And I just remember loving that music, and I was super bummed when y'all stopped. But that's why I was so stoked that you and Dave kind of picked it back up again. And it stokes me to hear that you're kind of going to head in that direction again.
Yeah, a little bit. Kind of the indie poppy kind of sound a little bit, but Dave and I both grew up loving Blink and Boxcar and NoFX and all these kind of pop punky bands, and so it was really easy to just dive right into that because we grew up on it. But
It's what you know.
Since yeah, exactly. Well, it's how we learned to play our instruments and things.
Yeah.
Were those bands.
Yeah,
And then
sure.
As we got older, we got into more and more genres, of course. But so it's kind of cool to just pull everything in, and it's a lot easier this time with just me and Dave because it's just the 2 of us. Whereas Voss Vitae, there were 5 of us, and each of us played multiple instruments, and so it was just insanity keeping all that together. It was
Yeah.
nuts.
It's a lot of logistics.
Yeah.
And honestly, from all the bands I've been in, the smaller the better.
Right. Yeah. Now it's just me, Dave, and some backing tracks. So we're playing to a click on stage, but it's the only way we can do it with the 2 of us, But
Yeah.
it
It
works.
doesn't
So,
matter. And plenty of
yeah.
people do it. That's totally acceptable these days. So
Yeah. We're just stoked we can pull it off, honestly. So stay in time, you know. So
You guys, do you guys rely on stage monitors, or you do headphones, in-ears?
I do in-ears, and then Dave uses the stage monitors, but we're gonna have to pick up some wireless in-ear sets because that can be tough, you know. Because if I start listening to Dave too much, then we'll like get off from
Yeah, sure.
the click.
The actual click, yeah.
Yeah, and so when we play live, actually lately, I tell him I don't want any feed from Dave at all. All I want to hear is the click, and it's worked out well so far. I think every set we've played, we look at each other at the end and we're like, we got through it. Like, we fucking did it. So, because you know, you get off even a little bit, the whole thing falls apart. So
Yeah,
but,
yeah, definitely. That's like the one disadvantage of playing to a click or having backing tracks is like you get off and it sounds fucking terrible for the rest of the song, you know.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about having it though is I think we play tighter than ever.
Yeah, dude, it's
you know,
consistency at its finest.
Yeah. Well, and it just sounds huge because with the backing stuff, we can add in anything we want. And so, you know, it's primarily for the bass. But we also throw in stuff like if there's like acoustic parts, we have that in there, or like any organs or synths.
The layers that can't be played by you manually. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds huge when we get to play it live, you know, or it feels that way at least to us. But yeah.
That's sick. So I see that you've coordinated your outfits today.
Yes.
Can you explain the significance?
This is just our outfits. It was kind of Daniel's idea, but it's, you know, what we do for photo shoots, videos. We wear it live despite how hot it is. And yeah, it's a consistent look because I think we all have known and seen bands that, you know, they walk in the room and you don't even know that they're together or that they're in a band until they walk on stage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we just kind of thought it's just, I don't know, just makes us look like a band, like we're, you know, in the same group. And I don't know, I think it's kind of cool. I never thought I'd be into wearing matching outfits, but I think it suits the idea and the project well. So,
and it makes us caricatures in a way too for promotional stuff and marketing and whatnot. Cause it's like becoming a cartoon character that's easily identifiable kind of thing.
It's a costume. You've put on a costume. Right. Yeah. And there's, you know, the performance element of being in a band and performing on stage. The costume is fucking important. And, you know, in my mind, it would kind of take the pressure off, like, you know, wondering what I'm going to wear at every show.
Well, it does. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's also just, you know, to make us identifiable. Like we get up and play anywhere. It's like, oh, those guys are in the same band. And what's funny is like recently people have been coming up and talking about us being brothers. Like, and it's, so I guess it makes us look alike too or something, but it works. We'll take it. Like I was sitting at the last show and overheard people talking about us and then they were talking about all their favorite bands that are brothers and this and that. And I'm just going to let them have it. Like,
hilarious.
I don't care.
That is fucking hilarious.
So it's working though, because you know people are talking about it.
No, I again, it's like you're wearing the outfit, the
Right.
costume. You know, it's like James Brown going on stage in his outfit. You know, it's the showmanship portion of the performance that most bands don't get to that point. They don't get to that level of coordination. You know what I mean?
It's not something I had ever thought of before.
Yeah.
I got the idea from I think I showed it to you, Dave, but James, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's this show on YouTube called No Cover, and it has the guitar player from Animals as Leaders as one of the judges, and maybe I have seen clips. Yeah, maybe I have seen clips of this. Yeah, dude, it's an awesome show. I learned a lot about the industry just from watching that. It's like kind of American Idol-ish vibes, but it's all based around bands, and they're playing original songs.
Yeah.
And they have like the 4 or 5 judges, whatever. It has a singer from Bush too, like a bunch of random people. And but one of the
Gavin
things
Rossdale? You
That
mean
guy,
90s
yeah.
heartthrob Gavin Rossdale?
that dude, yeah.
You mean Gwen
Cheated
Stefani's ex-husband?
Yeah, who cheated on Gwen
Were they married?
Stefani? Yeah, dude, for a long time. I think they have a
Yeah,
kid.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Actually. No, she's with
Blake Shelton now, yep.
Yeah. He's from
Blake
my
Shelton,
hometown,
isn't
I
it? Or
believe.
what's that the guy's name?
Yeah, Blake Shelton. I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure he's from Ada, Oklahoma, though. That's where I grew up. But yeah.
Okay, so how do these people connect to Kevin Bacon? Because we're close. We're like,
One of your
we got 3 more degrees and we're there, I think, if I did my math right.
Well, anyway, on that show, they mentioned there were some bands that they like didn't pass to like go on to the next round because of things like they were like, I can't even tell that y'all are in the same band. Like you're all different people. The vibe isn't the same. Like
Yeah.
you guys, like you're playing tight as fuck, but like
The vibes are off.
you don't have the image and whatever.
The X
and I was
factor,
like, that's something I never thought about, and it was around when, me and Dave were kind of getting this going and stuff, and we lost our bass player. And so it was just like, Dave, what do you think of like stupid matching outfits and just we'll become cartoons, and I think it works. I don't know. We'll see, we'll see how things play out, but it's little things like that, when you're trying to promote and market yourself, like
it's details.
easy
dude.
to overlook. Yeah.
It's detail shit, and the detail when you get to the details, it means you've already got a firm grasp on all the other shit. And people who have the details together, that's who gets people's attention, because they have the foundation of what they're trying to do, all their pages, their socials, their PR campaigns for every release, or how they want to keep up the momentum in between releases. Most bands don't ever even get to like organized in the core shit. The detail stuff, dude. I've worked thousands of fucking shows, and the shows that are fucking buttoned up are always better. Music I don't like, artists I would never buy their record, but their show was goddamn good, because whatever they were trying to project, they nail it perfectly. Lights, costumes, the order of the songs that they play. That's like the real nitty-gritty component of showmanship that most people never get. They never advance the thinking they have to be on top of that as well. That's the X factor shit. That's what makes you stand out from the other bands that you play with at any, venue or festival.
It's true. Like you can't just like put out a song or an album or something and then just go, that's it. Like I worked really hard on the song and producing it, and it's great. And
post about it for 2
now
days.
It's gonna blow up. Yeah, and that's not how things work, So and also there was like a recent video by what's that channel called? The guy something punk, and he like reviews.
Oh, Punk Scholar.
No,
that guy, Ian McKinty.
Oh, the Punk Rock Yay.
Yeah,
there you
Finn
go. Punk
Minty.
Rock MBA. Right.
Yeah,
Finn McKinty. There we go.
Finn, yeah. I was watching one of his videos the other day, and he was talking about how, metal has kind of lost its charm, and there's a reason. Like it's kind of bland now because there isn't that like rock stardom these days.
Yeah.
Where, he's, like as much as people might dislike him, like someone like Fred Durst, like there's a reason they're so popular, and it's because they stuck to an image, and
they doubled down.
They're and they're eccentric, and exactly that. And that just doesn't happen now in the days of, Gent and like it's all almost more like a circle jerk of just guitarists one-upping each other.
Well,
and
but
things.
it always, like, the way I've always looked at like that portion of the subgenre of metal shit, I've always looked at it like boy bands, right? So a metal band comes out and they're the X Factor band. They're the band that doesn't sound like anybody else. They're the band that is doing the thing. But then every other band wants to sound like that because that's hot. And then the people who are the labels representatives or the people who would have the responsibility of signing and developing artists, they don't know shit about art. They just know money. So they'll look and be like, oh, this one band came out and they're selling really well. So if we churn out 10 fucking bands, they're going to sell just like this band. That's music industry shit. That's how they've done this. Boy bands were just another example of that. You know, there was one that was super successful and then there was a million and now there are fucking none. Maybe One Direction. Are they still a thing? I don't know. Doesn't matter because the insane popularity of that being the only thing on the radio that had a time limit on it. I feel the same way with a lot of the general complaints about metal. I feel the same. It's just very few bands have that. It's one out of like 1,000 bands that comes along and leaves a sonic imprint on a genre that things like branch from.
His point was just that it's not, mainstream anymore. And also I need to clarify, I love gent and all that. So it's to me, but I get what he's saying, that it's not, it's not like the new metal days where, Korn and.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and any band, like, they're up against so much more now. Like back then it was relatively simple. You just had to get your band on the radio or TV. And that's how you would reach that hundreds of thousands or millions of people. But now it's the channels. The music industry is nowhere near as strong as it was in the 90s. That's the first thing. Like the amount of money being spent by the labels to produce artists and records is way less than it used to be. That's the first thing. But the other thing really is, there's just so much. There's so much. It's impossible. It's very difficult to get it to the point where you put something out there and it even has the ability to break through what one person sees in one fucking day across a million different social media platforms. I don't know. Like Limp Bizkit, they came around and there wasn't anything totally like them, and they were so eccentric that they fucking rode a wave, and they're still they're riding the other cycle of that wave now that the fans that they had back then are older and are nostalgic.
Well, you make like really good points, because I think a reason for all of that really is technology, because music, with streaming and everything, and so that kind of gutted the industry, and
the production,
Napster, of course, and
but even
the production, because technology is there where everybody can do it themselves now, including us. We do everything ourselves.
Yeah, dude, so right there with you. Yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah, so whereas before, you'd have to hire a studio, and same for videos and things. So there was a lot of money there that needed to be invested. I mean, it's still not exactly cheap, but nowadays it's more affordable now to do it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it is. So. It actually is feasible to do it yourself.
Yeah.
The issue now is just there's so much content. That's the thing.
Because of all of
breaking through the content. Like that's the pros and cons. Last week, my buddy Kellen was on, and we were talking about telecommunications and like the infrastructure and history, but one of the things we were talking about is just like the amount of information any person is subjected to on a daily basis. Right. And we also live in the era of, do you even know that information is real? Do you even know that trusted source isn't just straight up lying to you?
Yeah. And we're all guilty of it too. It's like you just mindlessly scroll through shit, and it's
part
so
of the
easy
society.
To overlook something great,
we were the experiment on that front. Number one, we were the experiment, but It's pros and cons of living in this society. We are immediately connected to anyone in the world, whatever information we need or want. But the cons, that list is just as long as the pros. But okay, so before we eat up all the time on this very heady undressing of the music industry, I want to get back to the main topic. And it's a topic that we've only talked about one time on this show. And I'm very excited to talk about it again. It's aliens. That's incredible. I love that.
Wore my special hat today.
Nice. Super appropriate attire. So let's just there's two things I want to ask you both before we dig into this. And it's of the recent shit that has happened. Did you guys watch this press conference?
Oh yeah. The Stephen Greer.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And then I'm sure you also watched this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Okay. Then that is what we will spend time focusing on. Now, what I found interesting is that the Stephen Greer thing was for the National Press Club. Stephen Greer's done a bunch of really pretty epic press club presentations for the past 30 years now. But this one's the most insane. This one's fucking unhinged. Every single person's story in this shit is you're just like, what?
Yeah.
What? So let's just unpack this one a little bit. Dave, have you seen either of these?
Just little bits of it, definitely not as much as you guys have, but I'm aware of what's going on. I've been keeping up with it very little, but I don't know. I'm excited to learn about it from you guys.
Well, let's get you fucking clarified. Up to speed. Yeah, let's get you up to speed.
That's
so
right.
Daniel, go ahead. Let's
Teach
have
me.
Your opening thoughts on this press conference and anything you want to say about it.
On that press conference. Okay. Well, my favorite story, I guess, of everyone that went up for that Stephen Greer press conference would probably be what's his name? Let me find it. Michael Herrera.
Oh, the first guy? Yeah, or the second guy? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. So he was the guy that he was a Marine, I believe, and he was in Indonesia for it was after there's a hurricane or something went through, and it was in 2009, I believe, and he went there as a humanitarian, part of a humanitarian effort, and so he and I think it's 5 other guys or something were sent to go do something. I don't remember, but they're walking around in the jungle, and then they come across this craft just floating in the middle of the jungle. Yeah, that exactly. And there was a ramp, he said, that went up to the craft, and then when it would get up to it, it was the cargo was being lifted up into the craft, and so these trucks just kept coming up and down lifting this cargo up, and then all these dudes dressed in all black with no military insignia, nothing, all surrounded them basically and took their weapons, took their IDs. They were scanning their IDs with something that looked like a modern smartphone, which is interesting because this was back in 2009. They took their cameras, their phones. They were threatening them the whole time, and they all had American accents, which is interesting. So they,
Well, he even says he's they had American gear. They were American. They were. This was an American thing.
And their gear was better than theirs too.
Yeah. They were amazed.
Yeah, and they knew what they were doing, and they were very good because they were surrounded, everywhere they looked, kind of thing, and they clearly were very skilled in whatever they were doing. They've trained, they've practiced this many times before, And so they basically threatened their lives, and then they knew that, you know, the rest of the Marines were close enough. So if they were to shoot them or something, they would hear it and come looking for their guys, you know? And so he thinks that's why they lived. And so they strapped their guns back to them in a way to where they wouldn't be able to reach back and grab them easily. And they escorted them out of there. And then they went back. And then he said when he got back to their base, like the next day, he went to his locker to get his camera because he had taken photos, and he didn't tell anybody about it, I guess. And he went to go get the photos, and the camera wouldn't work, and it was a digital camera, I think, and it was completely wiped clean, and the SD card was taken out of it, and like it's just wild. It's like who are those guys? Like that's something that story fascinated me the most, because something like I was talking about recently with my dad the other night, we were talking about all this stuff. And what fascinates me almost as much as the phenomenon is this like special access program, whatever it is, that this military force, these men in black, you know, like how do they always know where and when these events are happening, and they always show up, they sweep everything under the rug, they have everybody sign NDAs, like how are they so on top of it, you know? And they're global too, and they're always American. That's the other weird thing. And so like to me that's just as fascinating as like the phenomena stuff, you know? So that was my favorite story.
No, I would agree. His story is pretty excellent. You know, he goes into great detail saying he thinks they were smuggling guns and drugs.
Mm-hmm.
This container thing is specifically in this image because he said it had like a vacuum seal thing on it, and he was convinced it was taking drugs.
And potentially people. They think maybe human trafficking. Yeah.
Illegal operations. Now this is real. Okay. Now I don't know about his story, but what I'm about to say is real. This is a thing that covert aspects of the intelligence community of our country, and probably other countries, have done, but definitely in our country, and it's typically done to usurp congressional oversight, which is what that other press conference is about. But this shit is like our government, our intelligence agencies will happily commit crimes to raise money to pay for operations that they don't want to disclose to Congress. There's a very long history of this shit going back since the beginning of the fucking CIA in specific. But the Iran-Contra affair,
Mm-hmm.
that's how they were paying for the operations that they were doing, was by taking guns down there and bringing cocaine back, and then using the proceeds from the cocaine to fund the shadow fucking wars, so they didn't have to answer to anybody because taxpayer money was being spent. Now that other press conference is kind of focusing on the fact that Congress was lied to about how money was going to be spent. They were told it was going to be spent on something, and instead it was spent on these secretive programs with, you know, no real oversight. And that's where a crime would have actually been committed. So that's, if we see anything from this, it's because some illegal activity. But then again, knowing our government, they might deal with the issue, but they might just never talk about it again, you know, because they don't want to embarrass the institution. But dude, this shit is like, the shit that we have done, a monumental secret like this aside, the shit that the intelligence agency has done to keep things secret, dude. If this is real, and this is as large a scale as people are saying it is,
Mm-hmm.
then the military force that would be specifically responsible for protecting this would be robust, and it would be ruthless because it didn't have to answer to anybody. These are probably either people who are military or are ex-military and are working for a defense contractor like Lockheed or Raytheon as the security for all of the shit that, if there's a scenario where we've recovered craft, we take that craft and we would give it to the people who develop space plane technology and see if they could reverse engineer it, like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing. I mean, there's like a million fucking different defense contractors. Like what Herrera is implying here with this one is that this isn't an alien. This is an alien craft that's being used by clandestine forces to do illegal shit. So it's this super exotic technology we have, and they're not using it to protect America. They're probably using it to fund whatever program it is that they're operating. And dude, it's just crazy, man. There's so many instances in history where large amounts of people were sworn to secrecy and people just didn't say shit, or they didn't have an opportunity to say shit. The Manhattan Project is an immediate, I draw to that one immediately. Dave and I did the thing on Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip was that way for a very long time. Some of these people actually think that they're doing something for the betterment of the country. Some of these people are just following orders, and the people who are actually responsible for organizing any of this shit they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck, and they don't care what the collateral damage is.
Yeah, so that always just makes me wonder, like, what justifies it all for them, because by the sounds of it, in like the David Grush, I know I'm skipping ahead a little here, but in the press conference, he was talking about people fearing for their lives and things, including him, and it seems like they operate above the law. And so
Well, they do. This is what I'm saying is like the whole infrastructure that they've designed to not have to answer to Congress or Senate or any legal authority. They will happily behave like they're not accountable for anything.
Well, I just mean like for like the cover-ups and things, like what are they aware of that they feel morally and ethically justified to do or to operate the way that they do, and in total secrecy and threatening lives and hurting people, and this guy, the Michael Herrera suggests that they were there human trafficking on top of a horrible natural disaster, like a tragedy where those people need to be helped, not abducted,
trafficked by United States UFOs. Yeah.
So it's like, what insight do they have that they feel so obligated to hide? And is it a power move, or is it a?
Yeah, I mean, especially like when have you ever seen Dr. Strangelove?
No. Heard of it though.
I'm going to recommend that you immediately watch Dr. Strangelove, and it's a very sarcastic take on what the Situation Room would look like on the eve of doomsday. And it's a sarcastic take, but it's really not that far off. These career colonels, generals, career brass motherfuckers, everything is a threat. Everything must be destroyed. This is the military mindset. Right. Like those guys are always the people at the table saying, bomb it. Everyone else is like, oh, humanitarian relief. Maybe we open negotiations. Bomb it. That's always their response. So for two reasons, I see immediately why the level of seriousness and secrecy would be taking place. And even just like, bro, they used to say, I can't confirm or deny that Area 51 is a real thing. They used to say that. It took a president to be like, it's a real thing. It's a real place. but for the longest time, they just pretended like they didn't know what we were talking about, and people were just okay with that. There's nothing we could do. There's nothing we could do to force that acknowledgement. But this shit is like, it's billions of dollars. It's there's something going on outside of this planet. There's something going on, okay? And they don't want us seeing what's going on out there. For some reason, they are concerned, and this is 100% representative of the types of narcissistic and sociopathic fucks that would find themselves at the top of the food chain in programs like these.
Yeah.
The people, we're a threat. The people are a threat. If the people look up in the sky and see a fucking alien and have to come to the realization that their entire existence is a lie, their religion is completely wrong, that their fear is that would be so much for people that it would disrupt the order and chaos would ensue, and there'd be people overthrowing governments all over the world and blah 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 blah. The ironic part about that is that at least in America, 50% of the population they're not going to die on the cross of religion anymore. They might have been religion's a part of their life, but it's not necessarily, they're not as hard line as people used to be. Most people accept the idea that maybe we're not the only life in the universe. I personally feel like this would not be so shocking, but to career brass military fucks at the top of shit like this, that would be whether they believed it or not, that would be a justification. Anyone who knows about this must be killed, because this can't get out. Because if this gets out, it's going to disrupt the order. People will stop going to church. They'll stop going to their jobs. It's going to be anarchy in the streets. We're going to have to start nuking major cities just to get rid of the zombie population that's trying to. You see where I'm going with this? It's just...
Well, and I've heard too, like that. They say like, if the technology were to be released, the economy would collapse, and that would be, the end of the world as we know it.
Darn, what a terrible thing that wouldn't, because it's so great right now. How bad could something better be?
Well, and I think that's. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, well, isn't that's where they say that's where we get Wi-Fi and a lot of that in technology that from back in the 50s when Eisenhower met with, the aliens and everything like that.
And Roswell
like
and
it's
stuff.
Been leaked.
Yeah. Sure. So I guess, I don't know, some of that's maybe some soft disclosure of some sorts, but James and Daniel, I have a question. You mentioned, things from outer space. One point of the argument that I want to bring up is what's your take on them not necessarily being from another planet, another world or solar system, but them being interdimensional?
I mean, when we talk about this shit, we have to accept every possibility, right? And I'm saying that because I also think with this conversation, you have to entertain the idea that maybe this is all a psychological warfare operation against us to make us think there's a UFO threat, and there isn't really a UFO threat. They're trying to get us riled up so that we behave a certain way, when in reality, most of these are our craft. And if you see them in the sky, it's probably our shit. Or none of it's real. But honestly, at this point, it's getting hard to say that none of it's real because there's so much video documentation of it. The interdimensionality perspective of this conversation has always intrigued me, but I there's a couple different like converging ideas that I have on this, and it all kind of ties into if you start looking esoterically at all the world's religions, you see a lot of common threads. And in those common threads, there's usually a heavy emphasis at some layer on frequency or the vibrational nature of existence. Mm-hmm. And right now, if you think about your body as a radio receiver, Your eyes, we only see a slim portion of the visible spectrum. We only hear with our ears a certain portion of the audible spectrum. There's shit going on around us, radio waves, microwaves, all different. There's like a fucking, we're floating in an ocean of different wave energy, but we only interact with a slim portion of it. Just in the same way that you can have a radio and by turning the dial and attuning to a different frequency, all these stations are there right now, but because you're tuned into this one, you only hear that one. I think that's a conversation that also dovetails kind of on like the string theory, large hadron collider research, where they're trying to understand the nature of reality and the nature of light and the movement of subatomic particles. There's something there. We just don't have the technology. It doesn't make sense to us. If you give a fucking ant a lawnmower, what are they going to do with that?
Crawl all over it, probably.
That's it. Oh, this is cool. Whoa, look at this.
Yeah.
That's it. They're like we're a step above primates, and this shit is way beyond.
Way beyond us.
And that's like, again, that's not what I'm saying. It's what fucking people who fly jet planes, people who know this shit, people who understand the actual math and physics behind this shit and know that, like, by our current model, this isn't possible. But now I wanna also ask you guys this question. So there are a number of rabbit holes I've gone down that have led me to what I'm about to talk about. But I have heard for a long time, and it was actually, this guy talks about it in it was the guy that follows Mr. Herrera. Can't remember what his name is. Oh my God. Stephen Digna Jr., this guy. He talks about seeing this craft. He used to work at a live fire range in the desert. It's the biggest live fire range in the world, I think. And he said one night they were conducting an operation, and there were these two guys from Raytheon, which is a big, huge military defense contractor. And he kind of implies that this was a Raytheon craft, but from his perspective, he thought the craft in the foreground was actually a hologram projection from the craft in the upper right corner. So
I missed that part.
I've also heard a bunch, talked about a bunch when I have gone down the rabbit holes of like microwave antenna arrays, like HARP and IceCat. There's this idea that possibly some of what the shit that we're seeing in the sky is hologram. It's a projection. It's very advanced magic with the core principles of physics and science. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that with all the technology we've seen in our life and with all the known technology that we know exists, the shit isn't that crazy to me anymore. It's just not like to think that we could be projecting some of this shit in the sky with the crazy infrastructure of satellites and massive antenna arrays and even just like assets that we can put in the air, like actual planes with who knows what kind of capability. We have to keep an open mind there. And so with the interdimensional shit, I'm not that smart. So I don't think I found anyone that isn't kooky explaining it in a way that even remotely sounds like it's scientifically accurate. But I also just think we haven't developed the language to articulate that point in the same way that it took us up until now to develop the language to describe physics as we know it. Which I guess, and this is kind of like the big point of this. This shouldn't be secret because this will change life for everybody for the better. If we have some kind of limitless energy technology, we can really benefit from that. Like, if we have to reestablish some kind of new normal where everyone has to do a little bit less because we are harnessing some previously unknown energy source, I don't know. I think I see the scientific frustration as to why this shit is being withheld from us as aggressively as it is.
Yeah, we as normal people would gain from the release of that, but the elite, whoever is in the know and behind this, clearly wouldn't, or otherwise we'd all know about it by now.
Well, right now they're the only ones benefiting from it.
Yeah.
So if they open it up to us, that's that sucks.
Well, and I want to go back to, like, you mentioned, like, the hologram thing, and also it's tough to tell what is alien and what's ours, what's human, man or man-made. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this guy named John DeSouza.
Oh yeah. Here, I'll pull up a picture.
Yeah. So he's this former FBI agent. Basically the entire first series of X-Files is based on cases that he worked. Somehow it got leaked. I don't know. And he says it wasn't him, but he has a book called The Extra Dimensionals. I haven't. Oh yeah, there it is. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I've heard him talk about it in interviews and things, and he talks about basically the conclusion he came to after, I think it was like 29 years in the FBI researching these X-File cases and these paranormal cases, and he said he thinks there's like some kind of cabal, like elite cabal, that is going to create a like end of the world scenario and using these man-made crafts.
Yeah, a false flag alien attack kind of situation.
Yeah, exactly. Which is the only other time I had ever heard about that was, I think it was Alex Jones on the Joe Rogan podcast had mentioned that, and I was like, man, that dude's out there. Like he's going really far with it.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
that I remember even seeing that shit in like the early 2000s. Bob Lazar, like 90s shit. George Knapp.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
That has been in that world. A common conversation was there's going to be a staged alien invasion, and that's going to be the excuse to consolidate populations and justify the control of the population by various means, but none of it would be real. The aliens don't care. They're not in on it. It's just a fucking ploy from some, again, elite cabal of super powerful individuals.
Well, and that's what John DeSouza says, like there's been no evidence of hostility from these aliens.
Yeah.
I might have it wrong, or whatever they are. Maybe he said there have been cases of it, but as far as I remember, but when there are attacks or any kind of hostility, it's humans piloting the craft. And
we're the ones that are afraid. They're not afraid. Yeah. They'll just disappear. We're the ones that are afraid.
Out of there. Yeah, they don't care. Well, it makes me wonder, what agenda, this phenomena does have, and are they all, are some of them malevolent while others aren't, or like, is there some, it gets me to like an existential point, like of like maybe we're all like life in this dimension is just, we're all part of a play and we're acting something out, almost like in Buddhist thought, like, and what do they have to do with that? are they running this play? Is this something we're prisoner to, or is this something, or is this some kind of experiment? Is it, but we can only think within this one dimension, and with our tiny little monkey brains, so and so maybe what does this, this group, what do they know about that? What do they, is there something they understand?
What they have, dude, is context. The people who won the wars wrote the fucking history books. And it's
Right.
only those people that know the true scope of the story, right? Because the other person, their history got erased, right? And I think the story that we are familiar with the origins of our species and life on this planet, it's not right. It's been heavily altered, or at a bare minimum, terribly misinterpreted. And
And things are buried. Yeah.
well, and destroyed. Like if
That
back
too,
in the
yeah.
back in the day, if you make your house out of straw and wood, that's not going to survive 10,000 years. There's going to be no fucking trace of that. And I think I understand most of our roles in this layer of reality, and it's worker bee. We're here doing some fucking work for them. And the only reason I say that is look at how the majority of people, except those deemed to have more pure blood or birthright or some kind of, I'm going to touch on like a really hilarious thing, but the point that I'm trying to get at here is majority of people were just here to be bootmakers to kings. And whether those kings are humans or aliens, it doesn't matter, because that's the highest that our life is going to be. Even in the scenario where like we do a thing and we make a ton of money at it, we're still going to be somebody's servant. We're always going to be somebody's servant. So I think if there's any purpose to our existence or connection to extraterrestrial beings on this planet, we're just doing some work for them. We don't know what it is. Maybe we're mining something. Maybe we're developing some kind of outpost for them to serve some kind of purpose. Who the fuck knows? Doesn't matter. We're never going to know. I'm never going to have fucking, the top tier classified security clearance. So this is a strange one. Okay. So let's think about the story of Christ. Immaculate conception. That's just artificial insemination. So let's for a moment not assume that God, the artificial inseminator, let's assume that that's not a white guy with a beard in the sky, and let's assume it's a God or something that superseded humanity, an alien, came down from the heavens. Immaculate conception, the birth of Christ, the bloodline of Christ. The bloodline of Christ, and why I'm bringing this up, is because most of the families in Europe cling to the story that they are direct bloodline descendants of Christ. That's why the royal bloodlines are so heavily documented, and that has been treasured information and passed down from forever to forever, because the people, and whether that's a legitimate claim or not, I don't know. And I really don't care. But either way, these people think that. They think that the blood inside them is more pure because it's got some of that good alien drip in it. And the rest of us, we're just plebes, we're servants. Our purpose is to serve. We are expendable because our blood is not pure. This is really how these people think, especially the fucking European royals. They heavy documentation of how they think about the serfdom. But the same could be said about any ruling class in any country of any race or nationality. This is people. This is just a human behavior to want to come up with any fucking reason to make yourself better than somebody else or superior to. It's like a law of nature thing, a jungle rule. as we are just, creatures on this planet like any other creature on this planet. But that's something that's always tripped me out. And there's a few people that I found who have expanded upon that in more meaningful ways. One of them is this guy in Switzerland. His name's Billy Meyer. He's a hotly contested UFO contactee, but he's got some pretty crazy documentation. And in general, he just lived a really crazy life. But this shit is baked in. Like, look at all the fucking ancient stories, dude. All the ancient stories. Like, that
DeSouza guy.
The history that we know is not the real fucking history.
Well, I mean, you saw how Graham Hancock kind of got shut down by the mainstream almost immediately, when he had that documentary series come out on Netflix.
Oh, Ancient Apocalypse. Yeah.
Well, and then, like I said, in that DeSouza, the FBI agent guy, I think he was saying, that cabal comes from as far back as like Sumerian times, and like through history, they've kept this elite secret organization like as far back as written history. And it's just wild how I go from like Alex Jones is nuts to, I still think he's a little bit nuts, but like
he's definitely nuts. Yeah, there's no debate about that.
To like, I can't believe he said that they're gonna fake an alien invasion and then spending years reading all this stuff, and now I'm like, that's not like so far off,
you throw enough shit at the wall and some of it's gonna stick. And Alex Jones didn't used to be like this. There was a very long time where he was a pretty reasonable individual. It's just at some point he became fucking nuts. But
he became a character of himself.
Yeah, no, for sure. He became the character Alex Jones. But dude, that's not even hard to believe, because the Egyptian bloodlines can date back to the Greco-Romans. They were alive at the same fucking time. The Egyptians probably came from the Sumerians. And the Greeks and Romans went on to fucking rule Europe in a million different, subfamilies. And this is some old school shit. This is like some druidic shit, ancient shit. And the people that come from the families that consider themselves to be these elite lines, like, they really do think that. They really think my blood is more pure. I have the alien blood. I have the God blood.
Yeah. Anyone who gets in to any kind of leadership position that is not agreeable with that secret agenda, like I think like the whole JFK conspiracy is like a great example of, someone coming in and going, wait, what are we doing? Like, why can't peace be an option? And I think whatever this elite is, is controlling this military industrial complex around the world. And I think it's all, there's elite in every major country and superpower.
Yeah.
And and they're just waiting for the right time and building up to that time. And maybe we get to see some of that in our lifetime with all this disclosure and stuff going on. Like, what's
we
the
for
agenda
sure will.
Here,
What I have heard a fair amount. The reason that we're hearing the amount of disclosure that we're hearing now, which really started in 2017, thanks Tom DeLonge, pop punk hero Tom DeLonge. The prevailing theory is that this is the 10-year rollout. So the weird shit's probably going to happen closer to 2027, the back end of the decade. But that they're prepping us. That's what's happening. Like, the bottom line with any of this shit is, even that press conference, David Grush talking to Congress and Senate, somebody had to approve what he could and couldn't say. The government still approved what he could and couldn't say. So like this, I guess what I mean to say is, they're controlling the flow of information. They're doing this. right?
Controlling the narrative per
we're
usual.
not doing it. Yeah, they're rolling this out. They have complete control of the narrative, and from my experience, their track record, they can't be trusted. So you have to be like heavily skeptical. There's another character in this field. His name is Richard Doty. I'm gonna pull up a picture of him. But Richard Doty is known. There's an excellent documentary called Mirage Men, and Richard Doty is known as a person who went around to the alien folks in the 90s, and his explicit purpose was misinformation. So he had access to and knowledge of legitimate UFO shit. He would show that to people. But mixed in with that, he would show them bullshit, fake shit, easily debunkable shit. But he, being a member of the military and being a trusted source of information by these people, they took what he said, they would disseminate it, then somebody would shoot down the bullshit shit, and then it would immediately discredit the whole thing. That was his job.
Right.
He just went around to the people who were big in the alien sphere and planted the misinformation. They've always controlled the narrative. So I'll go back to what I was saying before. Like this is why I think it's important to keep every option open, because it is very possible that this is all a bunch of bullshit. It's not that people aren't seeing shit. It's just not what we think it is. It's a complete misrepresentation. It's not to say that there isn't extraterrestrials. It's just, it's not what we're seeing and what we're being told that we're seeing, not the actual same truth. They don't ever like to tell us the whole truth. They'll tell us some begrudgingly. If a reporter leaks some shit, we'll hear about it. But for the most part, we're never, ever, ever going to know the truth about most of the shit that happens at this level. JFK assassination is another prime example. Me and my buddy were just down in Austin. We went there. It's crazy. And being there is way smaller than you imagine in your mind. And the whole logistic reality becomes that much more real.
Right.
And there's another one. There's only a certain number of people that would have been on goddamn Air Force One with the president's body. There's only so many people. There's only so many people that would have had access or the ability to pull something like this off. And it's probably our government, right? And the reason that they're being so secretive and have always been so secretive about it is because it was probably people that everyone would have been familiar with in our government. And the talk that Eisenhower gives as he's exiting his presidency, the military-industrial complex speech, Eisenhower, post-World War II, was hyper aware. He saw the fucking sharks circling. He saw these business cunts from all these defense contractors just, they could smell the blood in the water. Let's make an excuse for war so we can get a bunch of big military contracts. He saw that coming. And by the time Kennedy gets into office, that was the government. And again, it's not necessarily just isolated to America, because when you look at how America has done business dealings, in particular, American politicians who own stake in massive defense contracting firms that do major arms deals with people all across the globe. Saudi, all over Africa, depending on our feelings with Russia, all over in that general area, definitely all over Europe, all over South America. Carlyle Group, Halliburton, like this shit, it operates so openly in our face, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's they sold us out a long time ago. That's why I don't trust any of these politicians. We got sold out before we were born, dude. There's nothing we could do about this. And what exists on the surface right now, to me, I can't trust any of them. I can't trust any of them. And I have a hard time relating to people who can.
Yeah, well, it seems like a lot of people feel that way too, because reading the comments on any of this stuff online, on YouTube, Instagram, articles, whatever it is, half of them are people just going, okay, it's cool that they're telling us, I guess, but why are they telling us? Like, what's happening right now, And so a lot of people are having that same thought, because now nobody trusts the government anymore, especially after COVID and everything.
How it behaves. How it behaves. When you start taking a cold, hard look at just the known history, it ain't good. It doesn't look good. And definitely the history with how the government and governments historically, or any governing body, religion before government, how they treated their populations, their people, never that good. Dave and I did a whole goddamn episode on MK Ultra.
Oh, yeah.
It ain't good. It ain't good. That's why everyone is so secret about this. And if we saw the unredacted documents, guillotines in the streets, I'm telling you, like that's what would piss people off. Not that there's aliens. It's that the government has been using us for so many, as the ends to so many means for so many different things, for really just the enrichment of a specific class of people that have kind of always been in charge, going back to the fucking Mayflower.
What do you think of Tom DeLonge then? Do you feel like he's a pawn for all this?
Maybe. It could be another Richard Doty situation, in the sense that they knew, here's a person who has a very large platform with an alternative audience. They'll probably be the most receptive to this information. Some of it's real, some of it's not. I also think that's why he writes fiction books, and he isn't releasing like real information. He's not doing dissertations on specific documents that have come out, or the whole infrastructure of, what is the thing, To the Stars Academy, right? It's all like fiction novels. And again, because so much of this, who knows? I don't doubt that he's seen shit. I don't know if that shit was real. I mean, the shit that was shown to him, whatever he saw with his own eyes is what he saw with his own eyes. But something like a government official comes to him and shows him something, who knows if that's real, because the government has set a precedent that they'll literally make it somebody's job to go around spreading misinformation. That's what the CIA does. That's like a third of their purpose, is to just control the fucking narrative, disseminate misinformation and actual information, and make it so muddy that nobody can tell the truth. And dude, they apply that. They've always applied that to us. And I'm not saying just America. I'm saying that has always been applied by the ruling class to the subjects. It's control. They need control. They are scared of us because we have the numbers. That's why. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. The only way we're going to unite as a country and as a people is if fucking aliens come down. They understand quite clearly that the existential threat must be so great that, just like with 9/11, will happily give away any semblance of freedom or autonomy that we have
for security.
And most people will. That's the sad part. Is like, we can talk about this 10 years in advance and say this is going to be this fake shit, and it'll still happen, and people will still react that way.
Yeah.
But
not
this is
with our tinfoil hats. We'll be
and this
like, I don't believe it.
But honestly, this is why this information needs to be out now. We just have to always take everything. Consider the source. Consider the source whenever you're dealing with this shit. Consider the fucking source. And, other countries aren't quiet about this shit. Other countries have openly talked about UFOs, UAPs for decades. America's the one that's always so mum. And it's because America's keeping a dirty little secret. There's a lot of dirty little secrets we have, but honestly, I've looked a bunch into even just the surface level of the black budget, which is the portion of the defense budget that isn't disclosed because it's classified programs. The infrastructure that exists there is fucking massive. Very few people realize that there is literally a completely other world, this defense contracting world. It's got its own economy. It's got its own signs and secrets. It's got its own infrastructure, cities worth of installations all over the globe, underground bases that are fucking, the size of multiple football fields.
Mm-hmm.
This shit is real. This is absolutely real shit that we absolutely really have. To think that they're doing nothing is naive as fuck. They're up to something, and it's probably not for our benefit. It's for their benefit.
Which is crazy they've been able to keep it quiet for so long. Like I guess the NDAs and the threats work, I guess. I don't know.
And dude, the Manhattan Project. That was a city's worth of people all over the world, but a city's worth of people in the desert, at least, probably a city's worth of people in Los Alamos labs. And none of those people talked until the fucking bomb dropped. And a lot of them didn't talk until well after, when, it was okay to talk about that shit because the secret was out. It's not hard.
Well, and for me, I mean, I know I keep just going back to it, but it's like, because humans are driven by purpose, in a lot of ways, and so I wonder, like, and Bob Lazar talked about how it's so compartmentalized and everything. I mean, they all say that, everyone that comes out, but
it's the military.
They must be like fed crumbs of something that keeps them motivated to keep going along with the unethical behaviors of the organization, and B, to not talk, and
bro, put that money in my bank account.
There's that. Yeah.
The black budget, the known black budget, billions of fucking dollars.
Well, and Stephen Greer's talked about
materials, but
yeah, they tried to pay him off. Apparently he was talking about, and they said they can literally access like accounts and just program money to show up in accounts, and that's what he was told apparently. And even with Greer, I'm like shaky on it. I don't know.
Well,
I definitely don't trust Doty.
Yeah, Doty is he's proven by his own word, but Greer, I honestly think Greer means well, and there's some stuff that I think Greer gets a little dramatic about.
Right.
But by and large, for the most part, he's always been on this tip. He's very rarely been by the people that do know what's up in the military who are willing to talk about this shit. They've always kind of greenlit Greer. And the bottom line is Greer's probably briefed every fucking president. Like this guy has been doing this shit for 40 fucking years. This isn't like he's dramatic because he's a showman now, because this is his job.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't think he's lying on behalf of any like government entity or anything. I do think he exaggerates though because of his own ego.
To capture,
that's the vibe I get,
capture the attention, to get the clicks, to get the views, to get the soundbite. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
But we didn't really get to talk about him that much. But the one guy who I think, at least on this press conference, is the most unhinged in what he says. This guy wasn't. His story was very sad. I think he was like a contractor who was going to do some work on a military base, a secret military base, and he saw something he shouldn't have, and they basically ruined his dad's life and then ruined his life. And then there's this guy, the guy who was in Antarctica.
Antarctica, yep.
This guy's story is fucking crazy. But one of the things, I don't necessarily believe 100% of what this guy thinks about these programs or these things that were there. But this satellite array that he's talking about, 100% real.
Yeah, there's images of it on
It's 100% real.
their
It's
website. Yeah.
verifiable. They talk about it in the same way the Air Force talked about HARP and being able to instigate the Aurora Borealis. 100% real.
Mhm.
And to think that we have that $1 billion toy down there and we're not playing with it, you got to be stupid. Like, you really have to be the most naive person to think that we've spent all this money to develop all this crazy infrastructure and technology, employed thousands of people, willing to fucking kill or ruin somebody's life if they disclose it. We're using this shit for something. And you know, again, the reason that it's so suspect is because of how the government is being fishy about all this shit. We're not being fishy by asking. We're just being curious citizens. The government is being fishy. Other governments haven't historically been this fishy. Like the UK, Nick Pope, he's like a really famous guy in the UFO scene. He was for the Ministry of Defense for the longest time. He was in charge of seriously investigating UFO claims for the military, for the British government was like, yeah, this is a real thing. We got to fucking acknowledge it. Canada, dude, Mexico for sure. Like all the other countries all around the world are a little bit more open to this. But the fact that our government in particular is so resistant to talking about it is like, dude, you're making it so obvious you're hiding something. Like,
At this point,
I don't know. It's like, just fucking swallow your fucking pride, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think it seems obvious to us, but you know, my family and friends, they all know I'm super into this stuff. And so when that congressional press conference happened, everybody was like sending me links to it. Like, did you see this? And for me, it was like, yeah, I don't think they said anything that exciting, because it's like, it's stuff, you know, we've been reading about and seeing in documentaries forever. It's just, they're just saying it on a mainstream platform now, you know? So, but for a lot of people, this does come as a surprise and gets their gears turning, you know? It's like, whoa, what is this? You know, special access programs and like,
I never thought about any of this before.
yeah. So, but you know, like we were saying, what's the agenda though? You know, maybe there isn't one. It could be the opposite. They could be scrambling like, oh crap, we didn't see this Grush guy coming, you know, like, so maybe it's a good thing. Maybe,
but they did, because in order for him to do what he's doing now, he had to go through this whole process, like submitting to the government, I'm coming forward, I'm going to be saying this shit. That's why he talks about in the press conference, they have a list. I had to submit to them what I wanted to talk about, and they told me what I could and could not mention in an open session.
Right.
Like this even that, it's like he didn't just stop going into work and leak the story to the press. It was like a whole, they're letting him say what he's saying. That there's a reason that there's pageantry behind it, for sure.
Yeah.
That everything on this planet is a show, Daniel. And this is
this
is a fucking show. They're putting on a show for us. It's regalia, it's fanfare. It's just a fucking show. It's like the everything's a fucking illusion here. So I don't know. It is trippy to me now, as somebody who's been into this shit for a very long time and been ostracized at every fucking party I've ever tried to fucking have a conversation about this shit. It is interesting to see it on the mainstream scale. But most people just aren't going to accept it until a goddamn alien comes down and slaps them in their face or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I've been surprised that the internet hasn't been more receptive to all this too. Like, it's just, we're bombarded with information, I guess. But to me, it's like, this is huge. Why isn't everybody talking about this?
It was hard to find this press conference again. Like, I remember watching it live and then trying to search for it tonight, and it took me, I was like, this is one Google search. This is one Google search away for sure. And I had to like dig. It was buried. Fucking buried.
Dude.
It's crazy.
Yeah, have you seen those videos of people that like do a Google search and they'll show like across engines after you scroll through a few pages, it just starts showing the same crap over and over again. Like, but meanwhile, it's saying it has like 180,000 results or something, but it's whatever they want you to be directed to.
Yeah.
And they'll just show you across engines, show you the same crap. Like it's like those clips of, the news anchors all talking in unison, saying the exact same words,
100%. 100%.
It's pretty wild when you start seeing through the matrix a little bit, it's just like,
well, especially like when you consider that any technology we have, it came from the government. It filtered down through some technology that was developed by the government. Government had cell phone technology in the fucking 50s. It was as big as a briefcase, but it was a fucking cell phone. They had video phone communication in the 60s. That was possible in the 60s. It's more elegant now, but they had that shit in the 60s. Everything we have now is trickled down from some development that the military no longer needed to solely and exclusively control. And
yeah, well, through patents as well, and
sure,
everything has to go through the government. Yeah, and that's a way for them to
control the technologies.
Make them disappear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a trip, dude.
Crazy. I would we really should wrap it up because we've gone super far, but this conversation has been fucking epic. We should do another one like this, and I'd say maybe we focus on, have you guys heard of In-Q-Tel?
I don't think so.
In-Q-Tel was like this angel investor firm that was like responsible for early investing in Google and Twitter and a bunch of like the big social media shit. But it's a long-standing notion that In-Q-Tel is basically just a front for the CIA. And the CIA was using that to, again, clandestinely fund projects that it saw as valuable for whatever reason, and then because of that funding, having unfiltered access to whatever data they want from that. And considering Google is the number one thing that people use to answer questions in their life, you can really know a lot about somebody by just looking through their Google history. So that might be an interesting one. It doesn't necessarily stick on aliens, but if some other crazy alien shit happens between now and then, we can just talk about that instead.
Dude, that's what's so cool about this subject, though. Everything does circle back to the phenomena in a crazy way, and that's what I always tell people. I'm like, I know that I seem obsessed with this, but it's existential though. There's more to this than just little green men and flying saucers. And I don't even know if that is accurate, but it's about the philosophical and like the existential aspects of it and because it starts boiling down to all the way to consciousness, and like quantum physics and like and politics. It's everything. Like it encompasses everything. So I think we can cover any subject and I'll find a way to bring it back to aliens. So
totally. Yeah, it's a good point. You can just, even if the conversation doesn't start about aliens, it'll probably find a way back to aliens.
Oh, I'll get there. Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, cool. You guys stay on. I'm going to hit this outro. You guys stay on, though. We'll wrap up after this. This has been the Totally Legitimate Business show with Daniel and David, and we hope everyone has enjoyed this conversation, and we'll see you on the next one, folks. Thank you.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva.
That's obnoxious.
Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva.
Literally no one cares.
For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod.
When will this end?
Thank you for listening. Now get back to work.
Move it along, buddy.